Teachers. Have you ever had a crush on a student, and if so, how did you feel about yourself? I used to teach entry-level programming at an art school to undergrads and later at the graduate level. It happened all the fucking time, but I never felt bad about it, 'cause they were adults and I was the same age. Obviously, I couldn't act on anything as a matter of policy, and I certainly didn't let it affect my grading, but goddamn it was difficult, especially with the 2 instances where I could tell it was mutual. Or maybe it wasn't and they just wanted better grades, I don't know. They both got C's regardless. Edit. I get it. D jokes. You could have at least upgraded them to a C++. My dad was my mom's professor at university. They got married. The marriage didn't go well. I am the result of what happens when people try to save a relationship by having a baby. Dude, me too. My parents are idiots. The fuck were they thinking? Glad I was born though. College professor here. I get a lot of gorgeous students, but the attraction usually lasts as long as it takes them to open their mouths. What can I say? When you're in your 30s, 18-22-year-olds suddenly seem very shallow and immature to you. Trust me, you will come to think the same way. But then I had a student who was not only stunningly beautiful but also very mature beyond her years, and she had a lot of similar interests to me. And what's better, because she was new to America, from England, she was also a bit lost and confused, and I told her she could to me whenever she wanted if she needed advice and guidance. She did for a while, but I never did anything but just talk with her. As attracted as I was to her, trying to make a move would have been a very tricky thing because student-teacher relationships are very taboo. The thing is though, as she adjusted to America, she started coming by less often because she didn't really need our talks anymore. After the class was over, I hardly ever ran into her anymore, so the opportunity just never presented itself. I look back on it now as for the best thing. Even if she had been interested in me, and I don't think she was, I'm quite used to my students, even the more mature ones, automatically seeing me as an old geezer, even though I'm 31 now and this was a couple of years ago. If I'd had a relationship with her and we'd been caught, it could have potentially been the end of my career, or at the very least it would have gotten me in a lot of hot water. But I also found that shortly after the class ended and I stopped seeing her with any frequency, that she fell out of my thoughts too, and I went back to being interested in women my own age who are preferably not my students. I'm actually glad that it doesn't bother me anymore, because I feel like it would be beyond pathetic for someone like me to be so hopelessly in love with a student. Sort of. I was 24 and she was 17, and I never did anything. But I totally acknowledged to myself that she was very pretty and clever. It made me feel weird, but I didn't sexualize her or anything. It was more a thought that wow, if I was 7 years younger, I'd totally be into her. But I didn't sexualize her or anything. Right? We got it, bro. Just saying. I had one sex dream about another student and it weirded me the hell out. I wouldn't let myself because I'd feel guilty. Not me personally, but had a guy that graduated my year 2012, secretly dating our student teacher for AP English in 12th grade. Not a huge thing, she was 4 years older. They started dating 2 weeks into the school year that year and he got her pregnant. They got married last June. It was a very weird situation for all of us that knew, as she was very open with the girls in the class when our main teacher was out for a few days. Once had a very attractive student teacher in my senior year. She was 24, I was 18. A ton of the other students were talking about how bad they wanted to fuck her. I became pretty good friends with her. We read similar books, listened to similar music. And one day she asked me for a ride home because her car wasn't working. I drove her to her house and she invited me inside. After talking for about an hour, we went into the bedroom and fucked. We kept it secret from everybody, and after I graduated we began a stable relationship. We dated for about 2 years until she moved to Washington. I would say she had a crush on me. I was a TA for a drawing class for a couple of semesters. It was the sort of TA position where the professor would hand you the outline for the semester and you'd teach one of his classes. There was this one girl that looked like a sort of Persian goddess. And she was fucking talented, which drew me to her even more. We got to the part of the class where we started doing portraits. I'd take volunteers from the class and we'd all draw them. I would bounce between critiquing students' work and doing the portrait myself, because observing is a great way to learn. The first few went very well. I was on my teaching game, and my portraits were up to my standards. Being a good sport, I'd give it to the model when they were done. The first one asked for theirs, and it just sort of became a thing. Then she came up. The thing about drawing is you have to be able to ignore your brain's preconceived ideas of what you are looking at and dissect the visual information analytically. I found her so beautiful. For the first time in my life I could not do this. I drew, I erased, I drew, I erased. I wasn't bouncing around as much as I had been, because I was so frustrated that I could not draw the one person in the class I wanted to draw. We finished, and it turned out okay. Not great, just okay. I still gave it to her, but I was honestly ashamed of it. At the end of the last portrait class, one of the models asked how they'd done. This led to a discussion on how they'd all done. Persian Goddess asked the inevitable question. I told her she was difficult to draw. She asked why. I immediately regretted my initial response. I think I said something about her features being unusual or something cringe-worthy. I wanted to tell her she was too beautiful, but I couldn't. If you're reading this, Persian Goddess, I'm sorry. I should have told you that you were gorgeous. I taught a large lecture class at university level for a number of years. My department head clearly stated that hanky-panky with students was a fireable offense. There were opportunities, but I did not pursue. One situation, though not directly pertinent, stands out. When lecturing, I pay close attention to student reactions. In larger classes, I tended to settle on certain students for my repeated sampling. If they seemed to understand what I was talking about, things were okay. During one lecture on some fairly complex ideas, I had included, among other students, one beautiful co-ed. Until that day, I knew she was beautiful and appreciated her for that, but nothing more. Each time I spot-checked, she was paying rapt attention, eyes wide, full of excitement at the knowledge I was dispensing. I was falling in love during my lecture. Such beauty, and she was enthralled with a topic that I totally loved. I required students to do a journal at the end of each class. She obviously had no clue as to what I was talking about. I was deeply puzzled. She had been right there, at every point. Later in the semester, I went to a men's basketball game. She was a cheerleader, and one of the prime ones at that. Even while our team was being embarrassed by the visitors, the cheerleaders kept doing their job as if the fans' excitement would make a difference in this lost cause. And she was one of their leaders, eyes wide, showing the same excitement and verve that I had interpreted as her interest in my lecture. I learned a life lesson that day. Not a teacher, but I have a story that's really odd. He was our grade 9 homeroom teacher, let's call him Mr. Nay. Mr. Nay was married, had 2 kids and a darling wife who was a counselor at another school. A lot of people liked him, but he was known to choose favorite and non-favorites. I was a definite non-favorite, so I don't really have any kind words to say about him, but I digress. There was this guy in our class, let's call him F. F was a typical wannabe gangster kid from the saggy jeans to the DC lid. He was actually a really nice guy, but had an attitude at the same time. Me and him have talked once in a while since finishing high school, and he seems to be doing well with his new girlfriend and job. But again, I digress. Remember how I said Mr. Nay had favorites? Well, let's just say the way he treated his favorites looked like crap compared to how well he treated F. F practically could do anything in that class while everyone else had limits, even the favorites. F could come in late to class, not answer questions and eat, drink whatever he wanted in class. But the one thing I'll never forget is how Mr. Nay would look at F occasionally as the class worked on an assignment or test. I really wish I had a picture, then you would probably understand where I'm going with this. It was pretty obvious to the majority of the class Mr. Nay had a thing for F, but as you can probably guess, It never went farther than the awkward glance and smile. F was completely oblivious to all of this as he was just happy to have a free class without worry. Who wouldn't be? Mr. Nay still works at my junior high and sadly, I do run into him a lot on my walks to and from certain places. I'll never know for a fact what Mr. Nay's fixation on F was, and it's probably better I don't know. I would just like to know this was just his way of being very nice to a student and nothing else. My secondary school English teacher had a crush on me. It wasn't obvious but I saw it. She was a BBW as classed by my friends. We were 14 at the time. I really did sexualize her and imagine sex with her. I would often stare at her thighs and extremely wide hips in class. She would often pick me out to answer questions and was more relaxed with me, while a little strict with others, as if we were good friends. She was a good teacher definitely. Fast forward a few years and I just finished college. I get a Facebook request from my English teacher. I immediately knew why she added me. She was 22 when she worked with us and that was what I told my brain when I wanted sex with her. We hooked up and had sex. I lived with her for a couple of months and moved out, had sex etc. That's it really. She just waited until I was old enough, and honestly, she gave better blowjobs than any of the other girls I was with. I work at an expensive school that teaches 4 to 7-year-olds. A few of my students have moms with husbands that work 80-hour weeks and became very interested in me. One in particular sent her daughter to school with skincare products, chocolates, and wine on different occasions. She kept trying to hang out with me outside of school and wanting pictures of me and her daughter together. When she finally got the message that it wasn't happening, she pulled her daughter out of my class and had her quit the school. It was weird. Hope you enjoyed this video. Feel free to hit the like button, comment your story, and subscribe. If you want more stories like this one, feel free to click on the videos shown here. Bye.